Hey guys, welcome to the Massive Iron channel. I'm Steve Shaw. In this video, we're going to talk about Massive Strongman with Mark Estrabio. Before I get into this topic, if you have any questions or comments, drop them down below. The best topic ideas I turn into videos just like this. If you need coaching, please check out the link down below. All right, we just released a new program called Massive Strongman. I didn't write it, so don't get all excited because I'm no strongman expert. But I brought in Mark Estrabio from TeamMassiveIron.com, and you can join TeamMassiveIron.com to check out Mark. He's got a little corner there. Mark, you wrote this program, and before we go into it, there is a link down below. Anybody wants to check it out, you can purchase this. All proceeds go to Mark. I'm not trying to make a dime off this. Mark, tell us about this program and what your inspiration is for developing it, and who is it for?
Absolutely. So, in terms of the inspiration for the program in and of itself, my idea here was to take the massive iron power building world and apply it to strongman. So, you could call it a strong building or body man if you really need one of those poor man toes for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, body man, that sounds great, right? The idea with this is it's not meant to be a competition prep event. This is not a program you would run if you were actually doing a strongman show. Think of this as kind of a commercial gym strongman adjacent program. So if you are interested in strongman, you might run this program in the off season if you don't have implement access, because it's going to build up a lot of the dimensions and muscularity that you need to build a successful base for the sport of strongman.
Now, which aspects, I'm going to move forward on this just a little bit because I
Mhm.
like to let everybody take a peek under the hood. Which aspects did you pull in from the massive iron world, and which aspects are from your world, amplified training?
Absolutely. So I'd say the biggest things I took in from the massive iron world was talking about things like plus ones, chasing those kind of PRs, not really focusing so much on the hyperfixation of the 1RM like you see a lot of strongman programs do. So chasing your plus ones, building that wide base to support a higher peak. So the progressions in the program, if they're not a bog standard massive iron progression, they're a modified progression that's very close in keeping with the spirit of the original progression, which we'll talk about a little later when I go over the deadlift as well as the push press flow state programming. And then on my side of things, what you're going to see is coming in from the amplified side of things. First and foremost would be the training split. It's a 4-day work week. You have your main deadlift accessories, strict press accessories, a squat and pressing day, which would be kind of your analog for an event day in a typical strongman program, and then a full body accessory day where we just target some weak links.
So you got 4 days in here. We have some massive iron style, some strongman training, and some conjugate concurrent. Conjugate
Yeah.
is something pretty new to the massive iron world because I'm no expert in that and don't dabble in that. So I'm going to move forward a little bit. I like everybody to take a quick peek at things. That's the way we do it on the channel. Can you kind of go through the training days real quick?
Absolutely. So day one, it's going to start with a paused deficit deadlift using a 12-minute block approach. Now, the reason why we're opting for the paused deficit deadlift here is that little pause in the concentric right as you break the floor really helps you dial in your hip height for your deadlift. What I find is a lot of guys who are starting off in strongman, or really in general, they tend to try and squat their deadlift. By using that pause, it helps kind of clean up your bar path. Then we move into the classic bent over row. I typically do this with a barbell. You could do it with dumbbells if you wanted to. Bulldozer for the lat pull down. The reason why we have the lat pull down here is I like to do a vertical pull after I do my deadlifts or squats or anything like that. Helps kind of decompress the low back. Then back extensions, leg curls, and weighted sit-ups using the 5, 10, 10, 20 approach. Reason for that is it's just a good, simple approach. It's not very complicated. And after those first 3 movements, you're going to be a little tired. So I wanted to pick movements that don't have a lot of setup or breakdown time. Now, the second day, we're going to do a seated strict press of your choosing. So that could be, the seated front press behind the neck if you've got the mobility for it using the threes protocol. Then we'll go into a floor press using the 5, 10, 10, 20 approach. Lou raises, so that's that lateral raise where you go all the way up. Bulldozer style, face pulls, bulldozer style, tricep press downs, bulldozer style, and rear delt swings, bulldozer style.
Sorry, I was going to say a lot of conditioning work. I mean, the bulldozer is rest pause. It's very much muscle building, but it's also good for conditioning as well.
Exactly, and especially with strongman, if you're doing something like a deadlift 4 reps, you got to learn how to strain through that discomfort and kind of gut check yourself. I remember one show I was at, we were doing elevated deads. It was 455, and the rep count, I mean, I got up to 27 reps on it. I was making deals with the powers that be upstairs between reps by that point. And if I hadn't built that conditioning, doing stuff such as rest pause work, I don't think I would have been able to.
I was going to say day 3, it sounds like you're starting with a little bit of hell. I see front squats in a 12-minute block.
Absolutely. So day 3, this is kind of your event training day, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I just want to touch day 2 really quickly here. So seated strict press, whether it be front or behind the back. And the reason we're doing a floor press here is in week B, we're going to be doing a different variation of the press. So we're using a shorter ROM secondary press on day 2. But day 3. So the front squat 12-minute block is, as you said, I mean, it's hell. It's a lot of front squats. Now, the reason why we're using front squats in this program is if we look at the needs of the strongman athlete, the squat is almost never a primary lift for them. It's a glorified accessory. And I find that the front squat helps improve multiple dimensions for the strongman athlete. So whether it be the rack position for their push press, it helps with loading events, it helps with moving events because it teaches you how to maintain a more vertical torso. Also, what I find is just puts less fatigue in the low back. So it has a lot of transference there. Then the push press 15-minute flow state. That one's a unique approach there, but it's not too far removed from your block approach. The main difference with the flow state work is what I want you to do is you're going to do doubles or triples on your push press, but then after each set, I want you walking away from that bar and doing a few pull-ups. And the reason why is if you look at a lot of folks when they push press, especially if they're newer to the movement, they start to rush, they start to panic, and they start trying to bounce the reps, and the bar is all over the place. We're using the pull-ups mainly to get you away from the bar so you don't get that fight or flight response.
So anybody looking at this, Mark, is going to look at the front squats and see a 12-minute block, and they're going to ask me, why in the world do you have a block? Because you don't advocate block sets or rest pause with squats. And I just wanted to interject here real quick because getting under the bar and racking on a back squat is a little bit different than a front squat. It takes more energy, more effort, more precision, and more time. I find a front squat, you can get under the front squat very easy. You can unrack a little bit easier, and it's a little bit more. It works a little bit better with the block or rest pause protocol than a back squat.
Yeah, and two, in the book, I even talk about the loading on this. It should be a very explosive tempo on your front squats. You should almost be coming up on your toes towards the end there as you accelerate through, because we're using the front squat to build leg strength, but also to cue that really good kind of, violent knee and hip extension, which in turn will help you prime for your push press.
Good. So what else do we have on day 3?
Yeah, so then it's the snatch grip RDL. Now, this one, I can already imagine several people are feeling their skin tighten. Now, the reason why we're doing a snatch grip RDL is if you look at a lot of strongman events, it's all about a rigid midline with a slightly rounded upper back and odd grip positions. And what I have found is a snatch grip or just really wide grip RDL is a great movement for helping improve multiple aspects of strongman. It's going to help with your loading events, such as bear hugging an Atlas stone or a sandbag. It's also going to help you learn how to hinge correctly, because what I advocate is taking it out of the rack using straps, getting that deep hinge there. So that'll help with your picks off the floor. And then two, just strengthening that upper back with the wide grip. When you go into something such as a Conan's wheel or some sort of front carry, having built that upper back, it keeps you from folding when you're carrying the implement. You see it all the time when people are doing their front carries, they start folding. All of a sudden, they're not breathing as well, and they usually wind up flopping over the keg.
So tell us about day 4.
But as far as the day 4 goes, we start with an incline dumbbell bench press here. I really like the incline press, as that's just a great all-around supplemental pressing variation for the strongman athlete. 30 to 45 degrees is what I recommend, just comfortable on the shoulders. Chest-supported row of choice, just give your low back a bit of a break. The day before you had front squats, you had push press, you had snatch grip RDL, so low back's probably going to be a little bit fatigued. Then we're going to do a deadlift stance leg press. And I really want you using your deadlift stance there, because that's going to help improve your leg drive in the deadlift. You're going to get that power through it. Because again, in the strongman world, squats and related movements are accessories to the deadlift or strongman events. So just that slightly narrower stance, you're going to have a little more transference. Then a fat bar curl of choice. So that could be dumbbells, that could be an axle. Hit it with the bulldozer. Skull destroyers, that's a classic movement from the strongman, from the massive iron world. Nothing wrong with those, because we all need more triceps, and then some ab wheel just to top off. and that would be day 4 in week A.
Good. So let's take a quick look at the B week. Looks
Mhm.
like you have pretty much the same thing on day one, but you have trap bar deadlifts.
Correct. So the reason why we're using the trap bar deadlift and we're using threes on that is the idea here is in your A weeks, you're using that pause deficit deadlift to help really refine your starting position. And because you're pulling from that slight deficit, it'll help you with your speed off the floor. Whereas the trap bar, when you pull off of a trap bar, it's like pulling off of a 2 or 3 inch block, depending on what type of trap bar you're on. And what I find is that lower block pull complements really well for improving your deadlift overall because now you're learning how to strain in that mid range. Also, to very common event in strongman, side handle deadlift such as the car deadlift, keg deadlift, anything like that. Threes protocol slots in really nicely there because you're going to build that rep capacity. And two, I feel like the trap bar works a little more nicely with the threes protocol just because of the positions. You can get a lot more leg drive in there. But the rest of the day stays the same as in week 1.
On day two, I see a few differences. I see pin press threes, close grip bench. That's going to be brutal and fun. And then we set the Lou laterals aside and do regular laterals. Am I missing anything else?
That would be it. So then the reason why I opted to there's also we swap out the face pulls for reverse pec deck. Tricep press down remains the same as does the rear delt swing. So yeah, it's the first 4 movements that change.
So tell us a little bit about what you got going on day two.
Absolutely. So we start off with a pin press because last week we did a full ROM press. So this week we're going to do a partial overhead press. So that pin should be somewhere between mouth and eyebrow height. Use the threes protocol, help build that strength through the sticking point. Because especially too, if you think about the push press, your legs will usually get you to either mouth or eyebrow height, depending on how skilled you are at applying leg drive. And then because we did a partial ROM on the overhead press, we're going to take a slightly extended ROM on our bench press variation, hence why we're using the close grip bench press. And then this week, we're opting for the lateral raise and then the reverse pec deck for our first 2 bulldozer movements. Only reason there is just for the sake of variety. That way, A and B weeks are a little more different, at least in terms of the first couple days, since day 3, nothing changes.
So day three, looks exactly the same, correct? And then day four, we lead off with some dips.
And that could be either, body weight dips or machine dips if you prefer. And the reason we're doing that again is this week we're just getting more extended ROM on the chest. And the dips themselves, they're a really great movement for helping improve the overhead press as well. And then big pecs, kind of silly to say, but if you think about when you're loading the stone, having big pecs gives you more purchase. Same thing if you're holding the log in the rack position there. So big pecs just give you a better rack position.
And chest supporter rows, tell us about how you perform those.
So how I do them here, kind of where I'm set up, is I just take my incline bench, I elevate one end of it. So I'm essentially doing a seal row because then I kick up the incline on it. You could do it on an incline bench like that dumbbell bat wing row, or it's dumbbell incline row is what I've heard it called. You could do, I think, is it GVS? He does what's called the humble row, where he puts his head kind of on the backside of a bench, or it could be a machine style row. Just anything where you're not using your low back as a key fulcrum there, because we just want to give your low back a break.
Now, everybody's familiar with massive curls, but there's 2 things in here I want you to touch on day
Mhm.
4 that I am not familiar with: the short stride walking lunge and the howling 30.
Absolutely. So short stride walking lunges are just what the name implies. Rather than taking your typical stride length in a walking lunge, you just want to reduce it a little bit. And the idea here is that shorter stride walking lunge helps build the leg and knee resiliency for moving events such as a farmer's walk, Conan's wheel, yoke runs. That way you're just taking shorter steps. You just want to think, because most people, when they take their walking lunges, they're taking fairly long strides. So whatever your stride length is, probably cut it in about half. Yeah. And then the
Correct.
Howling
Okay.
30s, that was actually something, I think that was actually one of the first times you and I ever interacted was when I posted about them a while back. I pretty much took the Skull Destroyers and just adapted it to be overhead. So it is 3 overhead tricep extensions with dumbbells and then 3 seated shoulder press, just back and forth until you hit 30 total repetitions.
I'll probably just steal that moving forward and give it to my clients and give you 0 credit, Mark.
You know what? I'm okay with that.
All right. So, guys, that is it. We're not. There's other bits of information and details in the program, but that is massive strongman. Mark put a lot of effort into this. You can, again, check out the link down below to it or head over to superlivingtoday.com. And Mark, I appreciate your time. Where can they find you on social media?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram as amplified.training and here on YouTube as well at amplified.training. And Facebook is also amplified training. Pretty consistent through it.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.